of Duty World at War's soundtrack is insane. I first played COD World at War when I was like 12 years old, and it kind of blew me away. It certainly was a change from the usual Pokemon and Mario I was used to playing at that age. I'm 24 now, and that opening theme still scares the shit out of me. So today we're going to take a look at some of the legendary music composed by Sean Murray. No, not that. This guy, and why I think his music basically makes COD World at War what it is. We're going to be focusing on the Russian side of the campaign, as I personally feel this is where Sean's music really shines. It's my personal favorite side of the campaign, but perhaps we can take a look at the American side of the campaign in the future. Anyway, let's go. Brav Soldat very quickly lets you know what you're in for the moment you load up COD World at War. This ain't no slide cancelling Nicki Minaj bullshit that we used to, you know, in the new COD. I still love the modern CODs, by the way, just not the new one as much. With COD World at War, we know we're about to be taken on a story of war. When working on a score, Sean often begins his work on the main theme, as he believes it dictates the tone and tenure of the film, or in this case, the game. A recurring theme you may hear me talk about is Sean's amazing use of sound design within his compositions. It's not only this, but he even blends genres like metal and techno into his compositions, and it just gives them such a cool, unique sound. Personally, in my own composition, I love blending sound design and music together, and to see this in Sean's score is something that I freaking love. I think playing this game at a young age is what's influenced me and shaped my sound. The start of Brav Soldat sounds like someone is bending and contorting metal, and it instantly makes you feel uncomfortable. The sound opens up into this metallic, reverberant, almost wind-like texture, and it even feels like you can hear the distant breaths of fallen World War II soldiers in the background. But by far, the best thing about this piece is its incredibly haunting vocal line. If you didn't know, the vocals in this song say, I quote, brave soldier, die with me, die with me, die with me, brave soldier, tonight. Bruh. This whisper-like vocal chills me to the core. It just sets you up for the mood for the game. Like, you know this is not gonna be a jolly or heroic war story. And that bit where the vocals do the whole is amazing. Chef's kiss. Then, about a minute and a half into this piece, you're met with this really nice polyphony between the brass and the string section. Kind of gets you going, gets you a little bit pumped, and then boom, that fucking creepy ass vocal comes back. Not only is Brav Soldat the star of the show at the start of the game in its main theme, it's also featured in the mission suite for Vendetta, where you get to meet the legend himself, Reznov. But when you play Vendetta, before you get injected with your second dose of Brav Soldat, you get to hear the beautiful voices of Fountain. If you close your eyes and listen to the start of the track Fountain, featured in Vendetta, you will feel like you have ascended to heaven. But in gameplay, dead bodies everywhere. This juxtaposition between these heavenly vocals and the atrocities that surround you at the start of this level works amazingly. Setting up a horrific scene with juxtaposed music like this, as we've seen in countless films, often something like a nursery rhyme or a nice happy piece of music gets chucked over something horrific, can just completely heighten the emotions for the scene. While the juxtaposition in Fountain isn't as blatant as, say, something like the ear scene in Reservoir Dogs, Fountain is a brief moment of peace before you're once again crawling through the mud, meeting up with Reznov, and Brav Soldat makes its return. Something I found particularly cool about this piece is Sean's clear inspiration from Eno Juhani Ratavara. Eno Johanny Ratavara. I'm definitely saying that wrong. Murray briefly mentions in an interview with GameSpot that his music was greatly influenced by Ratavara. To my ears, you can clearly hear the inspiration from Ratavara's music at the start of Fountain, where the vocals sound a lot like Ratavara's Thomas Soma Soma Act 1. Take a listen to this and tell me if you can hear the similarities between Ratavara's Thomas Act 1 Soma Soma and Murray's Fountain. I did not steal this pint glass from the pub. Now, as I said before, I love it when sound design and genre bending is really embedded into compositions, which is why we're going to be taking a look at the mission suites next for Eviction and Downfall. Now, there's a ton of music that isn't included in the official release soundtrack for Cold World at War, and much of the content in Eviction and Downfall that we're going to be talking about is included in that. Now, I think most of the music we're going to be talking about shows up on the official soundtrack in the tracks Chernov and Fight Parliament. There's an awesome playlist that I'm going to link below where you can take a listen to the full mission suites for basically every mission in the game. I strongly suggest you do, as most of this content is not included in the official soundtrack. Fully immerse yourself in World War II PTSD simulator. Right, let's take a look at Eviction first.
Dimitri, are you ready?
Töten Sie mich nicht!
He wants mercy. You do not deserve mercy.
What mercy did you show to
Let me die.
Wait! He may help.
Help us. He can die for us. Mudak!
What an opening. As we're dropped into a dark, dingy hallway in the heart of Berlin, we're very briefly greeted with a heavenly motif once again, before we're very quickly slung back into the horrors of war. Now, I'm sure many of you recognize that motif at the start, as it's theme used in Call of Duty Zombies across the entire storyline, like 4 different games, and it's ingrained in my brain at this point. Shameless plug, I also made my own round change themes for Lex's Diarise remaster coming out soon, so check that out. Now, the basis of Eviction's theme is very sound design focused to begin with. Long bending drones that sweep down almost sound like falling aircraft or artillery above. Sharp metallic hits rattle as we sweep through the buildings, and high screeching strings almost sound like distant horrified screams. The heartbeat-like percussion keeps you on the edge of your seat, and the vocal motif makes its return, this time encased in dark sound design. This atonal, atmospheric approach to music gives the SFX in the scene room to breathe, and it works brilliantly for building tension. Speaking of giving the in-game sound design room to breathe, Sean mentions in an interview that he sometimes even composed for World at War with guns from the game, like sounds of the guns in the game, on in the background while he was working. He does this so he can understand how his music fits in the mix overall, probably just get a better idea of the soundscape of the whole game. The start of Eviction is a fantastic example of how Sean's music allows the SFX in the game to really shine through and make the experience feel truly visceral. As you move through the level, something else you may notice is the unsettling playback of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart's Dies Irae. Dies Irae, Dies nuts. This really cuts through quite harshly over the top of Sean's underscore. Fun fact, this is actually what you hear when you first boot the game. Before you reach Brav Soldat at the beginning, you hear this. How cool is that? I imagine adding Mozart's piece here is probably a suggestion from the Treyarch sound team, or maybe Sean Murray, but I think it does a really good job at just adding even more chaos to the scene right before you're about to push out onto the streets. There's something really effective about classical music over chaotic scenes, like really brutal scenes, and this is a perfect example of how it works really well. It certainly makes the player more aware just how fucked up things are. Shortly after your concert with Mozart, you are moved out onto the mean streets of Berlin, where Sean's score is kicked up a notch. Making it out onto the streets, we're hit with a wall of aggressive sound. Everything is in your face, chaotic, frantic madness. Distorted 16th note metallic percussion cracks away and sounds like a distant gunfire. This is where we start to see some influences too from heavy metal music with distorted guitar lines alongside big reverberant drums leading your charge into battle. As an example, let's just compare these two different pieces of music when you place them in the scene of Eviction and see how they both make you feel. With Sean's soundtrack, the player doesn't feel like a hero. They feel like another one of the soldiers just flinging themselves into battle. In Cold War at War, you never truly feel like you're winning the game, and this music totally reminds you of that. Eviction is a chapter of ethical dilemmas and complete destruction. With Reznov screaming to kill them all and wipe the scum from the streets, while Murray's soundtrack blares through, we experience something completely different than your typical war hero story. Let's take a look at Downfall.
April 30th, 1945. When he first spoke of Dmitri, Reznov told tales of a hero. Someone we should all aspire to be like. At times, I have seen him show mercy, and at others act with complete brutality. I do not understand him. Perhaps heroes need not question their actions.
Steel yourselves, men, for the final push to victory. Today we crush what remains of their fascist right. As heroes, we will return to Russia's embrace. Our land, our people, our blood.
Your motherland needs your final commitment.
Downfall is Treyarch's finale to the Cold War campaign, and it certainly doesn't disappoint. We begin the mission in the halls of the historical Reichstag building, yet again greeted with an amazing vocal line. This time it's choral, almost hymn-like in its nature, and it feels like it's really reverberating around the hall around you. After the intro speech has got you absolutely locked and dialed, we hear another really iconic motif, this time sung by a Russian choir. It sounds really badass, and it reminds me a little bit of Jack Wall's main theme for Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, but it's only for a brief moment. We'll come back to that motif a bit later. I particularly love the start of this level, as it's just pure sound design to begin with. The Treyarch sound team could easily have directed Sean to go all guns blazing at the start of this track, just have the player storm the castle with big metal guitars and big symphonic strings, but I think not starting with that works even better. Not having an epic score from the get-go almost makes it feel like you have to earn that epic moment that's soon to come. As you make your way through the egregious nade spam in this game, the first section of this score is like really uncomfortable to listen to. It's really creepy. It's eerily absent of any melodic content, and it really lacks structure and any consistency. I think it works really well. I feel like the start of this piece almost embodies the collapse of the Reichstag building. The Russians have entered the Lion's Den, and we can literally hear it falling around us. Some really cool things that I noticed in the score that freak me the fuck out is what sounds to be like a baby crying in the background, and these string textures that almost sound like birds screeching. It's really weird. It's like this horrible screeching. There's even one part where to me it just sounds like a guy is straight up just crying in the background. Take a listen to these. Through the first room in the Reichstag and into a room filled with swastikas and the Reichsadler Imperial Eagle looking down on us. We're hit with Murray's pulsating electric guitar and synth lines that really kick things up a notch. There's almost some really cool call and response going on between the electronic guitars and the synths here. I think it's like the electronic guitar is in the left speaker, and on the right speaker you've got the synths, and they're sort of like jumping between the two. We start to hear the vocals performing powerful oohs and ahs as the Russians make their advance, and it almost sounds like these are the sounds of the Russians overpowering the Germans now. One of the most memorable features of this section is a powerful burst of 30-second notes that the percussion and the guitar play in synchronization. The coolest thing about this is it literally even sounds like the music is now shooting at you. It sounds like gunfire in the background. We even hear this played in bursts, in taps, in full sustained fire to mirror the sound of gunfire. As the player progresses through the level, the music follows the build and momentum the player and the Russians see. We even see the return of the music heard in Eviction, this time more grandiose with more melodic and orchestral elements. When the player reaches the top floor of the Reichstag, the music for the first time in a while begins to take a much more epic turn than sound design focused and gritty. We hear the return of the Russian chants from the beginning of the level, this time over a really powerful orchestral bed. This scene is pure chaos as the player is pushing through, the buildings falling down around them, and thanks to the score we finally get a sense of looming victory. This victorious and heroic feel isn't something we see a lot of in World at War, and I think it's great that Murray has saved it for the big events like this. Keeping the heroic moments few and far between is so much more impactful for the player. When you finally do experience them, they feel so much more rewarding and that you've actually achieved something in the game. Gets you pumped. But hey,
that's just a theory.
Game theory. But as the player exits the top floor onto the balcony, things take a slightly more somber turn for a brief moment. The vocals become more harrowing and straining, just as the player is reaching that final leg of the journey. Even a soft accompanying harp can be heard in the background, right before the player is struck down by a final German soldier. As Giga Chad Reznov comes to save the day once again, we're hit with World at War's most victorious theme of them all. This piece is one of the very few times we actually hear something in a fully major key. Like, nothing in this game is happy. I wish this theme was louder in gameplay. It's so quiet in game. It's such a powerful moment, and don't get me wrong, the piece of music is awesome. It's just, I wish it was a bit louder in game, because I kind of want to hear it blare through more as Reznov's doing his thing. But finally, we're met with victory, and the Russian campaign is over, and Sean's complete resolution within the score certainly lets us know, at least for now, the Russian journey has come to an end.
Shall emerge out of the blood and carnage of the past. A world founded upon faith and understanding. Of man and the fulfillment of his most cherished wish of freedom, tolerance, and justice.
After the final cutscene plays and the player is met with their momentary success, we're brought back to reality as World at War once again relentlessly reminds the player that there are no winners at war. This time, no epic orchestra, only what sounds like the ominous chime of a distant clock tower. And while Sean's score is a huge asset to this game, the lack of music in this scene is actually what makes it even more effective. And time for the player to reflect on the atrocities of the Second World War.